The most dangerous assumptions are the ones people make about money they don't understand. My name is Dr. Nathan Kovacs and I'm 28 years old. For the past 4 years, I've worked as a senior financial security analyst with the United States Treasury Department's Office of Intelligence and Analysis. Most people, including my family, had no idea what that actually meant. Nathan does something with computers and banking, my mother would explain vaguely to relatives. Government job. Very technical. We don't really understand it. My father was more dismissive. He works in an office somewhere in DC. Processes financial reports or something. Makes decent money, I suppose, but nothing impressive. My older brother Kevin, 32 and working in commercial real estate, was even less kind. Nathan's a number cruncher for the feds. Probably makes 60 grand a year to stare at spreadsheets. Meanwhile, I just closed a $12 million property deal. They weren't completely wrong about the spreadsheets. My job did involve analyzing vast amounts of financial data. What they didn't understand was the scope, the stakes, or the security clearance required. I held a top-secret/sensitive compartmented information clearance. My work involved tracking terrorist financing networks, money laundering operations, sanctions violations, and threats to the U.S. financial system. I had direct access to Federal Reserve systems, international banking databases, and classified intelligence from a dozen agencies. The savings account, my family thought I barely used? That wasn't a regular bank account. It was a specialized Federal Reserve operational account used for classified financial operations. The routing number was different. The account structure was different. The legal protections were extraordinary. It contained approximately $2.3 million in operational funds for ongoing investigations, held under my authorization as part of a joint task force tracking North Korean cryptocurrency laundering operations. My family thought it was my personal savings account where I kept maybe $20,000 or $30,000. They were catastrophically wrong. I'd made a mistake 6 months earlier, during a family dinner when Mom asked about my financial planning. I'd mentioned having an account with healthy reserves, to deflect questions about why I wasn't buying a house or a new car. How much? Kevin had asked. Enough, I'd said, trying to avoid specifics. Like 50,000? Mom pressed. You should invest that, Nathan. Talk to Kevin about real estate opportunities. I'm comfortable with my current financial situation, I'd said, which was true but incomplete. I should have been more careful. Should have been more vague. Should have remembered that my family had a complicated relationship with money, specifically, other people's money. Dad had always been a borrower. He borrowed from friends, from extended family, from business partners. He always paid it back eventually, usually after significant pressure. It was his pattern. See money, need money, take money, worry about consequences later. Mom enabled it. Your father is entrepreneurial, she'd say. He sees opportunities. Kevin had inherited the same tendencies. He'd borrowed from my college fund to invest in a failed restaurant. He'd borrowed from our grandmother before she died, promising to repay her from his upcoming big deal. He never did. I'd always been careful to keep my finances separate, my accounts private, my money inaccessible. I lived modestly, didn't flash wealth, and certainly didn't share banking details. But somehow they'd gotten access anyway. The first indication came on a Wednesday morning. I was in my office at the Treasury building, reviewing suspicious transaction reports from cryptocurrency exchanges, when my phone buzzed with a security alert. Unauthorized access attempt. Federal Reserve account #F7834C. Authenticate immediately. My blood went cold. I pulled up the secure terminal and entered my credentials. The access logs showed a successful login from an IP address in Potomac, Maryland. My parents' house. Someone had accessed my operational account. I immediately locked the account and pulled the full transaction history. One withdrawal, $85,000. Transferred to an external bank account I didn't recognize. $85,000. Taken from a classified Federal Reserve operational account used for tracking North Korean money laundering. This wasn't just theft. This was a federal crime with national security implications. I called my supervisor immediately. We have a breach. Someone accessed my operational account and withdrew $85,000. Jesus Christ, Nathan. How? I don't know. The access came from my parents' IP address. I need to secure the account and initiate an investigation. Do it, Nathan. This is serious. That account is tied to classified operations. If someone accessed it. I know, I cut him off. I'm on it. I spent the next hour securing systems, changing credentials, documenting the breach and trying to understand how someone had gotten my access information. Then my phone rang. Nathan, quick question. That savings account of yours, is there a daily withdrawal limit? My jaw clenched. What did you do? Well, your mother and I needed some capital for an investment opportunity. Time-sensitive thing. We borrowed $85,000 from your account. Don't worry, we'll pay it back in 60 days when the deal closes. You accessed my Federal Reserve account, I said, voice deadly calm. Federal Reserve? No, your savings account. The one you mentioned having money in. We found your login information in that notebook you left here last Christmas. The notebook. I'd written down a temporary password while troubleshooting a security issue during the holidays. I'd forgotten to destroy the page. Dad, that wasn't a regular savings account. That was a classified government operational account. Silence. What? He finally said. A Federal Reserve operational account used for classified financial investigations. You just committed unauthorized access to federal banking systems and theft of government funds. Nathan, don't be dramatic. It's your money, we just borrowed some. We'll pay it back. It's not my money. It's operational funds for a classified investigation. You've committed multiple federal crimes. Federal crimes? Nathan, stop exaggerating. It's a family loan. We do this all the time. No, Dad. This is different. This is a felony. Multiple felonies. Unauthorized access to federal systems, theft of government property, potentially compromising classified operations. Mom's voice came on speaker. Nathan, honey, you're being dramatic. We needed the money for Kevin's real estate deal. It's a sure thing. We'll pay you back by next month. Kevin's involved too? Of course. It's a family investment. Kevin found this amazing property. How many people know you took this money? Just us and Kevin. And his business partner Mark. Why? I put my head in my hands. 4 people knew about unauthorized access to classified federal accounts. For people who just committed federal crimes without understanding the severity. Mom, Dad, listen very carefully. That account you accessed is not my personal savings. It's a U.S. Treasury operational account containing funds for classified investigations. What you've done is not borrowing. It's federal theft, unauthorized access to banking systems, and potential compromise of national security operations. National security? Dad's voice wavered. Nathan, what are you talking about? I'm a senior financial security analyst with the Treasury Department's Office of Intelligence and Analysis. I track terrorist financing and money laundering. That account contains operational funds for those investigations. You've just stolen money from an active federal operation. The line went silent. Nathan, Mom finally said, voice small, what does that mean? It means I have to report this immediately. It means Treasury investigators will be involved. It means you'll likely face federal charges. You wouldn't report your own parents, Dad said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. I don't have a choice. This is a mandatory reporting situation. The second that account was breached, automatic flags went to multiple agencies. They already know. I'm legally required to file a formal report within the hour. But we're family. Which makes it worse, not better. You had access to my personal information because of family trust, and you exploited it to commit federal crimes. We didn't know. Mom cried. I told you I work for the Treasury Department. I told you not to touch my financial information. You chose to ignore that because you wanted money. Kevin's voice came on. Apparently they'd added him to the call. Nathan, come on. This is fixable. We'll return the money right now. No harm done. The harm is already done. You accessed classified federal systems. You withdrew operational funds. You distributed those funds to multiple parties. This isn't like borrowing $20 from my wallet. But we'll give it back. That doesn't eliminate the crime, Kevin. If someone robs a bank and then returns the money, they still robbed the bank. This is different. We're family. No, Kevin, it's not different. It's actually worse because you exploited family access to commit federal crimes. I could hear Mom crying in the background. Nathan, Dad said, trying to sound reasonable, surely there's a way to handle this quietly. You work for the government. Can't you just fix it? Make it go away. Make it go away? I repeated incredulously. Dad, you breached a Federal Reserve account tied to classified operations. There are automatic security protocols. Multiple agencies have already been notified. I couldn't make this go away even if I wanted to, which I don't. But I need to go, I interrupted. I have to file my formal report. I suggest you contact a lawyer immediately. A good one who handles federal crimes. Nathan, please. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, from the cold realization that my family had just destroyed themselves through their own greed and stupidity. I opened my laptop and began typing the formal incident report. Unauthorized access to classified Federal Reserve operational account. Funds withdrawn, $85,000. Suspects, Robert Kovacs, father, Linda Kovacs, mother, Kevin Kovacs, brother, Mark Sullivan, brother's business partner. Immediate investigation required. I attached the access logs, transaction records, and my own statement. Then I forwarded it to my supervisor, the Treasury Inspector General, and the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. The response was immediate. My supervisor called. Nathan, are you telling me your family stole operational funds from a classified account? Sir. They accessed my account using credentials they found in a notebook. They withdrew $85,000 and distributed it among 4 people for a private real estate investment. Holy shit. This is a nightmare. Do they understand what they've done? They think they borrowed money from my personal savings. They don't grasp the severity. They will. Treasury IG is already coordinating with FBI. They'll want to move fast on this. Breaches of federal banking systems are high priority. I understand. Nathan, you know you're going to have to testify against your family. I know. Can you do that? I thought about Dad's pattern of borrowing from everyone around him. Mom's constant enabling. Kevin's entitled belief that other people's money was his to use. Yes, I said. I can do that. 2 hours later, FBI agents arrived at my parents' house in Potomac. I wasn't there, but Kevin called me from the scene, panicking. Nathan, there are FBI agents here. They're talking about arrest warrants. What the fuck did you do? I reported a federal crime, I said calmly. Which is my legal obligation. You called the FBI on your own family? You stole from a classified federal account. What did you think would happen? We borrowed money. This is insane. In the background, I could hear an agent reading Miranda rights. Kevin, stop talking. Get a lawyer. Don't say anything else. Nathan, please, you have to fix this. The line went dead. The FBI had probably taken his phone. My supervisor called again. Suspects are in custody. All 4 of them. They're being transported to the FBI field office for processing. Treasury IG wants to interview you this afternoon. I'll be available. Nathan, how are you holding up? I'm fine. You don't sound fine. You sound like you're in shock. I'll process it later. Right now, I need to focus on securing the investigation and making sure no other operational accounts were compromised. Good. Professional. But Nathan, after this is over, take some time. This isn't a normal case. None of my cases are normal, sir. True. But usually you're not testifying against your entire family. The Treasury Inspector General's interview lasted 3 hours. They wanted every detail. How the credentials were compromised, what my family knew about my work, whether I'd ever shared classified information, whether this breach had compromised any ongoing operations. The North Korean cryptocurrency investigation, the lead investigator asked. Was it compromised by this breach? Unknown, I said. The account they accessed contained operational funds but not investigative details. However, the fact that someone accessed the account could potentially alert hostile actors that were actively investigating. So your family's theft could have tipped off North Korean money launderers? Potentially, yes. The investigator shook his head. This gets worse the more we dig into it. I'm aware. Dr. Kovacs, I have to ask. Did you ever discuss your work with your family? In general terms only. They knew I worked for Treasury. They knew it involved financial analysis. They did not know the classification level, the specific investigations, or the nature of the accounts I managed. But they had access to your credentials. I made a mistake. I wrote down a temporary password during a security troubleshooting session at Christmas. I intended to destroy the page but forgot. My father found it 6 months later. And used it to steal $85,000. Yes. From a classified federal account tied to counterterrorism financing investigations. Yes. Did it occur to your family that stealing from a Treasury official might be a bad idea? Apparently not. They viewed it as borrowing from a family member's personal savings. Because you never told them the truth about your work. I couldn't. My position requires discretion. Discussing classified operations with civilians, even family, violates security protocols. The investigator leaned back. So your family's ignorance is partly due to your inability to explain what you actually do. Their ignorance is due to their assumption that my work is unimportant and my money is available for their use, I corrected. I told them I worked for Treasury. I told them not to access my financial information. They chose to ignore both warnings. Fair point. By evening the charges were filed. Robert Kovacs, Linda Kovacs, Kevin Kovacs and Mark Sullivan were each charged with unauthorized access to federal computer systems, 18 U.S.C. Section 1030. Theft of government property, 18 U.S.C. Section 641. Wire fraud, 18 U.C. Section 1343. Conspiracy to commit the above offenses. Each charge carried potential prison time ranging from 5 to 20 years. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Extended family, friends, my parents' neighbors. Everyone wanted to know why I'd turned in my family to the FBI. I stopped answering. Instead, I focused on my work. The North Korean investigation continued. We secured new operational accounts. We enhanced security protocols. We traced the stolen $85,000 through Kevin's real estate deal, a questionable investment in a property that turned out to be involved in a separate mortgage fraud scheme. Your brother really knows how to pick winners, my supervisor said dryly, reviewing the report. The property he invested in is itself under federal investigation for fraud. Of course it is, I said. 3 days after the arrests, my uncle called. He was the only family member I still respected. A retired Air Force colonel who understood duty and consequences. Nathan, he said, I need you to understand something. Your parents are facing federal prison. Kevin is looking at 20 years. Mark Sullivan's family is destroyed. All because of you. All because they committed federal crimes, I corrected. They made a mistake. They didn't understand. They understood I worked for Treasury. They understood they were accessing my financial accounts without permission. They understood they were taking money that wasn't theirs. What they didn't understand was the scale, but ignorance of scale doesn't eliminate the crime. Their family, Nathan. Which makes it worse. They exploited family access to commit federal crimes. They betrayed my trust. They compromised national security investigations. They did all of that because they wanted money for a real estate investment. Can you testify against them? Can you really stand in court and help send your parents to prison? Yes, I said without hesitation. Silence. You've changed, Uncle Mike finally said. You used to care about family. I care about the law. I care about national security. I care about the responsibilities I accepted when I took this job. Family doesn't get an exception from federal crimes. Your mother is devastated. She should have thought about that before accessing classified federal accounts. You're cold, Nathan. I'm professional. There's a difference. He hung up. The preliminary hearings began 2 weeks later. I attended as a witness for the prosecution. My family sat on the defense side. All 4 of them in business casual clothing, looking confused and angry. Mom was crying. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years. Kevin kept glaring at me. The prosecution presented the evidence. Access logs showing the unauthorized login, transaction records proving the theft, recordings of my phone conversations where they admitted to taking the money. The defense tried to argue family borrowing, and misunderstanding, and no criminal intent. The judge was unmoved. These defendants accessed a classified federal account, Judge Patricia Morrison said sternly. They withdrew operational funds from an ongoing investigation. They distributed those funds to multiple parties for personal investment purposes. This is not borrowing. This is theft. This is unauthorized access to federal systems. This is exactly the kind of behavior that undermines our financial security infrastructure. Your Honor, Dad's lawyer tried. My clients genuinely believed this was the defendant's personal savings account. They had no idea. They knew he worked for the Treasury Department, Judge Morrison interrupted. They knew they were accessing his financial accounts without explicit permission. They made assumptions about the nature of those accounts based on their desire for money, not based on any reasonable inquiry. That's not innocent misunderstanding. That's willful ignorance. The lawyer tried a different approach. The defendant's own security failure, leaving credentials in a notebook, contributed to this situation. Dr. Kovacs made a mistake, the judge agreed. But that mistake doesn't give others the right to exploit it. If you find someone's house key on the ground, that doesn't give you permission to enter their house and take their belongings. Your Honor, these are family members. Which makes the betrayal worse, not better. These defendants had privileged access to Dr. Kovacs's personal space and information because of family relationships. They exploited that privilege for personal gain. That's an aggravating factor, counsel, not a mitigating one. The defense had no response. Bail was set at $100,000 each. My family couldn't make it. They remained in federal detention pending trial. I was walking out of the courthouse when Kevin's lawyer approached me. Dr. Kovacs, my client would like to speak with you about a possible resolution. There's nothing to resolve, I said. Your client committed federal crimes. He'll face federal consequences. He's your brother. He's a criminal who stole from classified federal accounts. Being my brother doesn't change that. He's willing to cooperate, provide information about how he intended to use the funds, return all remaining money, testify against the others. Against our parents? I asked. If necessary. He's looking at 20 years, Dr. Kovacs. He's terrified. He should be. He committed serious federal crimes. He made a mistake. He made choices. Bad ones. Now he lives with consequences. You really won't help him? I am helping him. I'm helping him understand that actions have consequences, that other people's money is not his to take, and that federal crimes carry federal penalties. Those are valuable lessons. He should pay attention. The lawyer looked disgusted. You're going to destroy your entire family. No, I said calmly. They destroyed themselves. I'm just documenting it. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. My testimony alone was damning. Detailed explanations of account structures, security protocols, classification levels, and the nature of the operational funds that were stolen. The defense tried character assassination, painting me as cold and uncaring, someone who valued his job over his family. Dr. Kovacs, Kevin's lawyer said during cross-examination, you've testified that you love your family. Yet you're helping send them to federal prison. How do you reconcile that? I don't have to reconcile it, I said. Love doesn't mean enabling criminal behavior. Love doesn't mean allowing theft. Love doesn't mean compromising national security for family convenience. But surely there were alternatives to prosecution. No, there weren't. When federal accounts are breached, when classified operations are potentially compromised, prosecution is mandatory. There are no alternatives. Not even for family? Especially not for family. If I gave my family an exception, I'd be violating my oath, compromising my clearance, and suggesting that federal employees' families are above the law. That's not how this works. So your job is more important than your family? My responsibility to the law is more important than protecting criminals, yes. Even when those criminals are related to me. The defense had no response to that either. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. All 4 defendants. Sentencing came 2 months later. Robert Kovacs. 7 years federal prison, $85,000 restitution, 5 years supervised release. Linda Kovacs. 5 years federal prison, $85,000 restitution, 3 years supervised release. Kevin Kovacs. 9 years federal prison, $85,000 restitution, 5 years supervised release. Mark Sullivan. 8 years federal prison, $85,000 restitution, 5 years supervised release. My mother collapsed crying. My father looked broken. Kevin just stared at me with pure hatred. I felt nothing. That night, back in my apartment, I received an email from Treasury Secretary's office. Dr. Kovacs, your handling of the recent security breach was exemplary. Your immediate reporting, thorough documentation, and professional testimony prevented potential compromise of critical national security investigations. You demonstrated that even in difficult personal circumstances, Treasury personnel maintain the highest standards of integrity. You are hereby commended for your service and awarded the Treasury Distinguished Service Medal. Additionally, your security clearance is being upgraded to top secret/SCI with full access to special access programs. Your continued work protecting America's financial systems is invaluable. Secretary Janet Yellen. The commendation felt hollow. I'd protected national security and upheld the law, but I'd also watched my entire family go to federal prison. Was I proud? No. Was I satisfied? Not exactly. Was I right? Absolutely. My phone rang. Uncle Mike. Nathan, your mother wants to talk to you before they transfer her to the federal prison in Alderson. I don't have anything to say to her. She wants to apologize. Apologies don't eliminate federal convictions. Nathan, please. She's your mother. She's about to spend 5 years in prison. Give her 5 minutes. I almost said no. Almost hung up. Almost protected myself from the emotional manipulation. But I agreed. Mom's voice was broken when she came on the line. Nathan, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for not understanding your work, for not respecting your boundaries, for thinking we could just take money from you. I'm sorry for everything. Hey, I said. That's it? Just okay. What do you want me to say, Mom? That it's fine? That I forgive you? That the federal conviction doesn't matter? None of that would be true. I'm your mother. You're a federal criminal who stole from classified accounts. Being my mother doesn't change that fact. How can you be so cold? I'm not cold. I'm honest. You committed serious crimes. You're facing serious consequences. That's how the law works. We didn't know. You didn't care to know, I interrupted. You saw money, you wanted money, you took money. You didn't ask permission. You didn't verify what you were accessing. You just took what you wanted and assumed there would be no consequences because we're family. You could have warned us better. I told you I worked for Treasury. I told you not to access my financial information. What more warning did you need? Silence. I love you, Nathan, she finally whispered. I hope someday you can forgive me. I love you too, Mom. But forgiveness doesn't eliminate consequences. You'll serve your sentence. You'll pay your restitution. And maybe, eventually, you'll understand that federal crimes carry federal penalties, regardless of family relationships. I hung up. 5 years later, my parents were released from federal prison. Kevin still has 4 years remaining. Mark Sullivan got out last year. I'm now the Deputy Director of the Treasury's Office of Intelligence and Analysis. My security clearance is the highest possible. My work has contributed to dismantling terrorist financing networks in 14 countries. My family doesn't speak to me. Extended relatives whisper about the son who turned in his parents. Holiday gatherings happen without me. I live alone in my apartment, surrounded by commendations and security clearances and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I did the right thing. Was it worth it? Every single day I prevent financial crimes that could harm millions of Americans. I track money that funds terrorism, enables human trafficking, and destabilizes governments. My work matters. My integrity matters. My oath matters. More than family loyalty to criminals. More than protecting people who betrayed my trust. More than enabling patterns of theft disguised as borrowing. My father thought I was a low-level number cruncher with a savings account he could raid. He was wrong. I was a federal agent protecting classified operations, managing millions in operational funds, and carrying responsibilities he couldn't comprehend. And when he breached those systems, when he stole that money, when he compromised national security for a real estate investment, I did my job. I reported the crime. I testified truthfully. I protected the integrity of the system. Because that's what federal agents do even when the criminals are family. Especially when the criminals are family. The $85,000 he borrowed, Cost him 7 years of freedom, his reputation, his marriage, and his relationship with his son. He thought he was taking money from a savings account I never used anyway. He was actually stealing operational funds from classified counterterrorism investigations. Assumptions about money you don't understand are dangerous. My family learned that lesson the hard way. In federal prison, with years to reflect on how catastrophically wrong they were about my boring government job. I sleep well at night knowing I protected the system, upheld the law, and demonstrated that no one, not even family, is above federal consequences. That's not being cold. That's being a federal agent. There's a difference.